Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Coyotes Corner alongside Dave Vest. I'm Luke Lapinski. Dave, training camp is here.
It is. How excited are you?
I'm very excited. You know me. All summer long, I'm looking forward to the start of the next hockey season. That's how it works. So, the NHL season ended on June 11th. We're finally here. It's been 3 months, and I'm ready to go. Media Day is Thursday. Training camp starts officially for the Coyotes on Friday. They're starting all around the league, and this is it. Hockey's back, finally.
It is, and it's a very exciting time around here for the Arizona Coyotes. Lots of changes in many different areas, as we all know. A new coaching regime is coming in. Rick Tocchet leading the way with 2 new assistants and a handful of veteran players who are coming to the Coyotes from teams that were in the postseason last year. So we'll talk about some of them later in this podcast. But just in general, Luke, it's a new era around here, and it's on the eve of a new era that we're doing the podcast, and very excited to be doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of new faces around here, a lot of rookies, but also, like you said, a lot of vets that have won. Some of them have won cups in this league before, and that includes the head coach who has won cups as a player and a coach. But Rick Tocchet sort of mentioned this at rookie camp last week, and some of the players mentioned it as well. It's almost like the first day of school for everybody. I mean, so many of the faces around here, whether it's the coaching staff or the actual players, are all new. So they're all kind of learning who each other are. I mean, you've got the guys that have been here, the Oliver Ekman-Larssons, and even a guy like Max Domi is only in his 3rd year. So it's going to be a really exciting season. I think the style of play that Rick Tocchet brings is going to really bring out the excitement level for the talent level that they have. But training camp in particular is going to be very intriguing because there's a lot more on the line this year, I feel like, than there is in typical years.
Rick Tocchet, of course, coming to the Coyotes from the Pittsburgh Penguins. They won back-to-back Stanley Cups, of course. Rick was an assistant on their staff. He's taking over as head coach here. Not his first head coaching job, as we know. He was a head coach before in Tampa Bay. But Rick coming back to Arizona, obviously a huge fan favorite when he played here in the late 90s, coming back as the head coach. His 2 assistants, real quick, we'll mention John McClain and Scott Allen. We've had a chance to see them. They are all here. They're in the hallways. They were at the rookie camp. I can tell you firsthand, they're very excited to get this thing going. I'll let you talk about some of the new players coming in because I know there's a couple that you're really excited about.
Well, I mean, if you're just talking specifically about players that have established themselves in this league already, we think back to draft day and John Chaika pulling off those 2 trades that morning and really sort of stealing the show, heading into the draft at least, bringing in Antti Raanta and Derek Stepan and Niklas Hjalmarsson. Hjalmarsson has won, 3 cups with Chicago? I think the reaction in Chicago, you can't always gauge a player's value by how his old team reacts or how the fan base of his former team reacts, but they were not happy to lose Niklas Hjalmarsson, and everything he brought to that team is what the Coyotes are hoping he will bring here, and he's been doing it for 10 years in this league, so you would expect him to continue to do it. Derek Stepan's been a really solid center in this league for a while now, too. Depending how the lines shake out, he could be on the line with a couple really good playmakers. And Antti Raanta is somebody with a lot to prove. He's never been a full-time NHL starter before, but at his age and sort of that mid to late 20s range, showing the pedigree he's shown now the last couple of years as Henrik Lundqvist's backup, and there's worse players to learn from than Henrik Lundqvist at that position. And at times last year, outplaying Henrik Lundqvist for decent stretches of the season. That's those 3 guys that they brought in on draft day, I think, really changed a lot of people's outlook for this season.
Yeah, that's all very well said, Luke. I applaud you for that analysis.
New complimentary Dave Vest for 2017-18.
I'd like to add a little bit, if I may, on to your comments about Derek Stepan. Derek's been in Arizona since the middle of August. He's been skating out at the ice den informally with some of the other Coyotes players and some of the other NHL players who are skating together in the offseason. Had a chance to talk to Derek Stepan. He is a really nice person, I can tell you, and he loves to talk to the media. He's been in New York his entire career. He's used to being around the media. I can tell you his personality is great, and I think you're going to see he's going to be a leader in that locker room when it comes to talking to the media during the good times and the bad times. I'd also like to point out that Derek Stepan is a winner. I mean, he's been in the NHL since 2010. He's been to the playoffs every year.
Yeah. So
having a person like that come over and having him be so excited to be here and to be a leader on this team, I think Derek Stepan is a player to watch for sure, and I think the fans are really going to enjoy watching him on the ice and off the ice.
I think I just found my my interview for the first preseason game.
There you go.
Because that's exactly the sort of player you want in that locker room with such a young team. You know, it's interesting. One thing you touched on there, he's been working out here a little bit this summer with some of the other players. I find it really encouraging that there was a core group of these young Coyotes players that are either trying to make the team or have already made the team but are trying to take the next step or whatever, that stayed in Phoenix for the most part over the summer, which just that sentence alone says something, that have sort of already formed a bond off the ice. And that's not, you don't have to have that to have a winning team, but it's a real nice boost. I mean, I'm sure there are teams in NHL history that have gone on to win Stanley Cups where some of the players aren't that close. But it can only help when these guys, you know, because then when you're on the ice, you're not just thinking, hey, how do I get my shot? You're like, oh, that's maybe my best friend over there on the right wing. I'll just, you know, I know where he's going to be. You have that sort of chemistry both on and off the ice. And when you factor in that they were hanging out in 110-degree weather to forge that bond, that's really encouraging going forward. That's something else Rick Tocchet sort of mentioned during the very short rookie camp last week, but that's how we head into training camp. So who are some of your players to watch here in this camp, other than maybe just the three we brought up? Right.
Obviously the new guys. Yeah. You want to see how they adjust and how they fit in with this team. The Coyotes that have been here for the past few years, you touched on a little bit, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, of course. There's Max Domi. There's Anthony Duclair, who recently signed a new contract. I'm going to be watching the young guys. Last year, of course, there was a handful of young players who won jobs with this team in training camp. I believe it was 5, if memory serves. 5 players.
How many players made their NHL debuts over the course of last year for the Coyotes?
There's not as many this year in that crop of players looking to earn a job, you know, for the first time in the NHL, but there's a few I'm going to be watching. Clayton Keller, obviously. Clayton Keller had a very busy season last year, playing for many different teams at many different levels and excelling on all levels. His attention now is fully turned to the Coyotes and making this team. A lot of observers nationwide and internationally are predicting many great things from Clayton Keller. I saw several publications name him the favorite to win the Calder Trophy. Now, are we getting a little ahead of ourselves? Perhaps. He hasn't made the team yet, but I think the potential is so high for Clayton Keller, and the opportunity on this team is there. I think it's his for the taking.
How fun would it be to have a Coyote win the Calder Trophy? And look, if nothing else, that means Dave Vest accompanies me to Vegas for the NHL Awards show next year. And I mean, you can't put a price on that. But, you know, we'll hit on some of these other players, but starting with Keller, the only knock on him is his size. But then you see him in the World Juniors last year, and you realize, okay, well, he's dominant against his peers, against the very best of his peers. And we didn't get to see him much in the NHL last year. I mean, he was only here for a couple games. But then you see him at the World Championships in the summer. Those aren't his peers that are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Those are some of the best NHL players. He was fairly dominant there, too. So the hype around him is real. I mean, the skill is there. The instincts are there. He's got the right attitude when you talk to him off the ice. He's not overwhelmed by this. He's not tentative. He fully expects to come in here and not just make this team, and that's not a given, but he fully expects to make the team and be a force right out of the gate. He's not taking this slowly, which, from my perspective, is a good thing.
I'll also be watching Dylan Strome, Luke, of course. Dylan's story, well documented. He was the 3rd overall pick in the draft 3 years ago, or was it 2? It
was only 2. Everybody
3 drafts ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Sort of.
Because the Heeshear draft was 2 months ago or whatever, and then the Matthews draft, and then the McDavid draft. So, yeah.
2015.
So 3 drafts, 2 years.
Thank you. Dylan Strome, watching him, obviously a lot of it is expected of him. This will be, he played here a few games last year, but returned to junior. His junior career's over, so he's going to play pro hockey this year, and everyone's wondering, where is that going to be? Is it going to be in the Valley for the Coyotes or in Tucson for the Roadrunners? So Dylan has a lot to prove in this camp. And Christian Fisher, he's another young player who we saw a little bit of last year, and he
scored every time he touched the puck.
He seemed to do that, didn't he?
Yeah.
3 goals, I believe, on his first 3 shots.
Yeah.
So Christian Fisher, he will be at training camp as well. So Keller, Strome, and Fisher, I'll be watching all 3 of those guys very closely.
Yeah, going back to Strome for a second, you're right. He'll be playing professional hockey this year, no matter what. This is not like inside information. Obviously, nothing has happened yet. Training camp hasn't even begun. If he starts the year in Tucson, that's not the end of the world. He's 20 years old. It's unfair to compare anybody else from that class to Connor McDavid. It's unfair to compare rookies from the last 10 years to Connor McDavid. So I understand that we've talked about Strome now for a couple years. There's a very good chance he starts this year with the Coyotes. And if he does that, I mean, you and I have both seen him. He's put on some weight, which is a good thing in his case. That was something that they were talking to him about last year, and that just comes with the simple fact that he was 19 years old last year. But he's been eating right. He's been working out. He's one of those guys that's been here for the majority of the summer, really putting in the effort both on and off the ice. It's a big year for him, but I would just say to everybody, it's a big year. It's not a big just first week. Like if he starts in Tucson, so Brendan Perlini started in Tucson last year and things worked out pretty well. So yeah, those 3 guys in terms of rookies. But if you want to talk about other guys to watch during camp,
please do.
Oliver Ekman-Larsson is somebody I'm watching at the start of the year. There's nothing you can pick up on his game from camp because he's been here and done this before. Anthony Duclair is somebody I'll be watching because he put up 20 goals 2 years ago. And you talk about all the good young players on this team. When you have 7 or 8 or 9, it seems like at least 1 or 2 are going to take a step back in year 2. Unfortunately for Duclair, that was him. Now the question is, how does he bounce back in year 3? Because if he comes through with another 20-goal season, well, all of a sudden that's a jolt of offense they didn't even have last year. So with the way things transpired in the offseason and the way I envision Rick Tocchet coaching his team, Anthony Duclair is in a really good position to succeed this year. So now we need to see him look like the guy he was 2 years ago. One
other player I'll be watching closely, Brad Richardson.
Yeah.
Of course, we all know what happened to Brad last year. He suffered that horrible injury playing against Vancouver where he just kind of was fallen on top of by a very, very big NHL player. Yeah. And his leg snapped, as we know. Brad has been working extremely hard to get back, and we had a chance to talk to him as well over the summer as he's been training, and he's ready to go. And he has a great attitude. He's looking to have the best season of his career, is what he told me. He feels his health has returned, and he's a huge part of what the Coyotes need. They need depth at center, and we know that. Brad Richardson, a veteran of this league, he's played many, many games in the NHL. I think he could quietly be a very solid presence on this roster if he's 100%.
Yeah, when you look at the center position, you've got Stepan, you have Strome in the mix, you have Christian Dvorak, who we haven't even talked about yet, and you have Brad Richardson, who I think people kind of forget about because he didn't play the second half of last season, but the start of last season, he was one of the bright spots for this team, and it's nice to have that mix of vets and rookies or second-year players, especially at that position, because you need some experienced centers, maybe even more so than any position, just guys that can come in and win you face-offs. There's a lot more defensive responsibility as a center than there is as a right or a left wing. So, yeah, Brad Richardson, if this team is winning games right out of the gate, I suspect he'll be a pretty big part of that.
Okay, so let's provide some information. Training camp begins Friday, September 15th at 9 a.m. here at Gila River Arena. The group of players will be divided into 3 groups, Team A, Team B, Team C. They'll practice one after the other. The first practice, as I said, starts at 9 o'clock. That's Team A. Team B will practice at 11 o'clock. And then Team C takes the ice at 1 o'clock. And the reason I'm providing all this information is that fans are invited to attend free of charge.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing anything on Friday, come on out to Gila River Arena and you can watch the Coyotes practice, for a couple hours or all day long if you like. If you can't make it, Luke, very exciting, as we've done the past few years, we're going to have a live stream of the first practice of training camp. That's Team A. They'll be taking the ice at 9. We will have a live stream featuring Bob Heathouse, and somebody else I can't remember.
Well, let me jump in and jog your memory, Dave. That somebody else will be me. So me and Heater will be doing the live stream for the Group A at 9 o'clock. It's look, there's a couple of different ways you can look at this. If you love hockey, and you should, then come out here and watch the first day of training camp. Even if you're kind of new to hockey, it's 105 degrees outside, so come in and watch the first day of training camp. It's free. And look, if you have to work, I understand that's when you flip on the computer at work and don't actually do work. Listen to me and Heater and watch the first day of training camp. There's 3 options, but either way, you're watching the first day of training camp.
And one note I'd like to point out, the live stream will be done through Facebook.
Okay.
You can also watch through the Coyotes website, arizonacoyotes.com, but it will be originating through Facebook. And the reason we're doing that is so fans can participate and ask questions as always. So hopefully at some point during the live stream, you and Heater will be able to take a few questions and touch base with the fans.
I love the questions. You and I did Facebook Live last year, and that was one of my favorite parts was the questions because I love the spontaneity of that. We have no idea what's coming, right? So it's just, let's test your hockey knowledge. So that'll be exciting. That Friday morning is I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so looking at the board and our production meeting notes, our production meeting that lasted about 90 seconds.
Our production meetings are Dave writing things on his whiteboard that aren't, I'm convinced, completely in English. You go between like 4 different languages, it looks like. And you have other stuff on your whiteboard, like own personal information.
Yes. Let's not talk about my dentist appointment on November 3rd.
Or your bank account password, which always seems to be up there for some reason.
It's Bosco.
All right, so anything you want to touch on from rookie camp? I know you went to the tournament over this past weekend. Before you get into it, I love the fact that the Coyotes were a part of this year. And I know some NHL teams have done this. I have long been a proponent of, like, the NBA has their summer league, and I know that goes a little bit longer, but you get to basically see the rookies or the prospects actually play games with their future teammates. For the NBA up in Vegas, the Coyotes went to San Jose. They played in a 3-game rookie tournament with the Ducks, the Avalanche, and the Sharks. They finished 1-2. You were able to watch all the games online. I watched parts of the first 2. And then you were there, Dave, specifically for all 3.
I was, and it was a very well run event. I give huge kudos to the San Jose Sharks. They were the hosts. Most of the games were played at their practice facility, and just a terrific job by the Sharks as the host. The Coyotes, as you mentioned, played 3 games, 1 win, 2 losses. But that's not really what this is all about. Of course,
it's like preseason football,
right? You want to win every time you play anything. But this was more about evaluating young players and seeing where they are and how much progress they made over the summer. Keep in mind the Coyotes were the youngest team at this 4-team event. They had 11 teenagers among the 29 players that went to this event.
They had teenagers on the team, the NHL team last year. Get used to the Coyotes have been the youngest team here for a couple years. Now even in rookie tournaments, they're the youngest team.
A couple of players that jumped out to me, some we've already talked about. I thought Christian Fischer played well in his 2 games. He was a dominant physical force, as you would have expected. That's what his game is about, and he didn't disappoint. I thought P.O. Joseph, he's the player the Coyotes drafted this year, 23rd overall. He played all 3 games, and he looked really good. I thought he was a little ahead of the curve of where I thought he would be. He's very smooth on the ice, and he fit in very well with this group of players, and he was one of the youngest players out there. So I thought he played well. A couple of surprises. Kyle Capobianco, a defenseman. We don't talk about him a lot, but he's been with the Coyotes for some time now. He was the best player in my eyes in that first game against Anaheim. Unfortunately, he suffered a very minor injury and didn't play in the next 2 games, but he really impressed myself and the Coyotes management staff, I can tell you that.
And just to be clear, when it comes down to final cuts, Dave, do you have any say in who makes the team?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to get that. John Chaika and I, we talk about things like that, but not nearly at that level.
And it usually ends with him laughing in your face and saying, I'm trying to build a winner.
One other player I want to mention, Hunter Miska, the goaltender. He came in from the University of Minnesota Duluth. He signed with the Coyotes right after that season, and this was his first go-round with the Coyotes in a competitive way. I thought he was terrific. He showed his athleticism, and he played very well in his first showing with the Coyotes.
Glad you brought him up. A lot of times when you get a college goalie, for whatever reason, you just sort of end up signing him as a free agent, and that's what the Coyotes did with Hunter Miska last year. Minnesota Duluth went to the final, I believe, and lost.
They did. They lost 3-2 in the championship game,
and he was a major reason why they got to that point. But bigger picture for the Coyotes, there's been some question the last few years when you start to look in the prospect pool, what the Coyotes, who's the next goalie up, if it ever came to that. And we've talked so long now about how the Coyotes have had all these good prospects in the system up front, and for a while there they had a few at defense, and now a lot of these guys have already moved up to the NHL team. But at goalie now, you have a pretty solid hierarchy of Antti Raanta and then Louis Domingue at the NHL level, but Aiden Hill and Hunter Miska at the prospect level, and you have to have those guys there.
Right. Nice tandem for Tucson.
Yeah.
Aiden Hill and Hunter Miska. I think the Roadrunners are going to benefit very much from having those two goalies, in the rotation for them down there. Obviously, you mentioned Raanta and Domingue are the goalies in the NHL, but like you said, the cupboard is not bare when it comes to goaltending prospects for the Coyotes.
And that's just such a different position to draft and develop at the NHL level. A lot of times when you draft a goalie, you end up developing him and he ends up on another team or whatever. And so for the Coyotes to go out and get Miska after he'd already played some college hockey and you've already seen what he can do, and now he's going to be somebody in the system that, who knows, he can step in and maybe be the starter someday. Aiden Hill, from what I've seen of Aiden Hill, I'm impressed, and I know they've been impressed too, even going back to last year's rookie game. So that's sort of an underrated thing about the Coyotes now that they didn't have working in their favor necessarily 3 years ago.
So 29 players went to San Jose with the Coyotes for the rookie camp. 20 of those players, Luke, will be at main training camp, which we've already mentioned begins this Friday.
Yeah. So I tell you what, one other player that we didn't mention, Brendan Perlini, who not necessarily, again, I don't know how much you're going to see.
Now wait, Brendan was not at the rookie camp.
No, I know. I'm just transitioning now to training camp here again. We were talking about players to watch. He's a player. There may not be a player on this team I'm more excited to watch when the regular season starts, because he looked the part of the pure goal scorer last year. He was on pace for, I believe, 33 goals, the rate he was scoring. And he started the year in Tucson. But he's another one of those guys that I'll be watching in training camp and throughout the preseason games. That's where you're really watching some of these guys that have been in the league for a year or two, like Christian Dvorak and Brendan Perlini. What sort of jump have they made this offseason, and how are they going to look when you play LA or Anaheim or San Jose in the preseason?
Okay, number 3. Why don't you take it?
Well, this is exciting. Paul Bissonnette will be part of the broadcast this year. I know that people have been aware of this for a little while, or at least heard the rumblings. It's official now. I just saw him out in the hallway, so he's definitely here. I can just tell you the very first time I ever interviewed Paul Bissonnette on the postgame show, after the interview, I told him, look, I know you're playing in the NHL. This is the last thing on your mind. You're going to end up doing color commentary for somebody somewhere down the line. And here we are.
Yes, it's very exciting. Everyone in the office is excited today, more than usual. Paul was in the offices. We were having some meetings about what exactly he's going to be doing for the team. We know, of course, he's going to be on the radio broadcast as an analyst for Bob Heathouse, who, of course, does the play-by-play, and yourself with the pre- and post-game shows. So Paul will be on the radio. He's also going to be an ambassador for the team. You will see him at hockey clinics. You'll see him at hospital visits. You will see him at celebrity waiter events, all of those fun things and all of those very important things that the Coyotes do within the community. Paul will be a big part of. You'll also see him, of course, on social media. Mm-hmm. BizNasty 2.0 on Twitter. Over 1 million followers. I know you have, 980,000?
Yeah, I'm so close. I'm just, hoping 20,000 of his followers will start following me so I can hit 1 million too.
He has 1 million followers, and he's going to be doing a lot of fun. I can't get into any of the specifics. We don't want to spoil anything. We're a month away from the season still. But Paul will be very active on social media, as he is now.
Yeah.
But he'll also be incorporating a lot of Coyotes content into his social media persona.
All things, even I know you didn't want to go into specifics there, but even a couple of things he threw out there as an ambassador that he'll be great at. Like, he thinks the game really well, and He was a fan favorite when he was here. I don't think he ever lost a fight. I don't remember him ever losing a fight here. But, if you're just kind of looking from the outside in, you're like, okay, well, he's a fighter, whatever. One of the most intelligent hockey minds I've ever interacted with. And I mean, the guy and he's even said this, in interviews, he has that self-deprecating humor, which is great. You can't take yourself too seriously in this business. And he's great with that, but he's also said, look, I didn't play a whole lot on some of those teams, but I asked a lot of questions on the bench, and he was with the Penguins for a while. He was with the Coyotes, obviously, and he was even with the Kings for a little bit. I mean, he's been around some great players, and he knows the game really well. I'm excited to hear how he does, because he's a great speaker. I'm excited to hear how he makes that transition into actually doing the color analysis, which I think he's going to be fantastic at.
So everybody stay tuned for that. I think you're going to get a chance to hear Paul during the preseason. First preseason game at home.
Oh, it's so close. See,
it is.
This is where you start speaking my language. We're recording this, I'll just pull back the curtain, on Wednesday, September, I don't remember what day. I think it's the 13th.
It is.
The first preseason game for the Coyotes is 5 days away from when we record this. So who knows when you're listening to it. But the first preseason game is Monday, September 18th, here at Gila River Arena against the LA Kings. And it's funny when you talk to people that are sports fans but don't follow hockey as closely. They'll hear the training camp is starting on Friday, and they'll be like, "Oh, preseason a couple weeks away." Not like 3 days away. We don't waste time in the NHL. Preseason is 3 days into training camp. It's going to be exciting.
Speaking of exciting, a couple days ago, Coyotes were the guests of honor, if you will, down at Chase Field. The Diamondbacks inviting the Coyotes to come down for a themed night dedicated to the Coyotes. Now, the Coyotes did the same for the Diamondbacks last season. It was Diamondbacks night here. Diamondbacks returned the favor. The Coyotes were down at the ballpark, and lots of fun, I can tell you. I went down there with a group of the guys. I went down pretty early in the day because a group of the Coyotes players wanted to take some batting practice.
Yeah.
And we went down. I got to witness that. There's some good baseball players on the Coyotes, Luke.
Oh, yeah. It's funny how there's been this bond now between the Diamondbacks and the Coyotes I feel like it's really strengthened over the last, 4 or 5 years maybe?
Yeah.
But every time they do this, the players that go jump at the chance to get down there and take some batting practice beforehand.
Lawson Krause, Louis Domingue, Brad Richardson, Jordan Martinook, all four of them jumped in the batting cage before the Diamondbacks did, took some swings. Lawson Krause crushed a home run.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me. He's a giant.
Well into the right field bleachers. He won the contest. He was the only one to hit a home run.
Yeah.
The other guys came close. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, or I'm not going to embellish. They came close. Louis Domingue can hit a baseball. He was more of a gap hitter.
Yeah.
The ball into the gaps. Brad Richardson, Jordan Martinook also got some good cuts. And then after batting practice, they went out in the outfield and shagged flies and got grounders and from the Diamondbacks who were hitting batting practice to them. So that was a lot of fun.
So when we're building the company softball team, probably bat Louis leadoff and Lawson cleanup.
Right.
Okay.
I'll bat second, you bat third.
I mean, obviously, we got to put guys on base, right?
After that, Derek Stepan, who we mentioned, he threw out the ceremonial first pitch. I asked him beforehand, what are you thinking? Because he's an athlete. He said he was going to throw a knuckle curve.
No, okay.
I don't know what he threw, but it was quite high and just a tad out of the strike zone.
Just a bit outside?
Just a bit high.
Okay.
Nevertheless, the catcher caught it, so there wasn't any embarrassing footage of that.
He didn't drill a cameraman or anything?
But I can tell you Derek had a lot of fun. He brought his son with him, and it was just a great way for Derek and all the other Coyotes who love baseball to just have a night out before camp and just experience being the guests of honor at a Major League Baseball game.
Yeah, that's always a fun time. It's a great atmosphere right now at Chase Field too, with the success that team's having. But for whatever reason, hockey and baseball always seem to go hand in hand. Maybe it's because the seasons don't overlap that much or whatever it is. But that was really cool. Town Hall coming up on September 23rd, which is before the Coyotes' not second preseason game, but second preseason home game.
Correct.
That'll be
on the
next
23rd.
Saturday.
Right. September 23rd against the San Jose Sharks. The game's at 6 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, an hour-long town hall, as you said, with Coyotes executives. I can tell you Andrew Barroway is scheduled to be there. Steve Patterson is scheduled to be there. And John Chaika is scheduled to be there. So the three of them will be at the Renaissance Hotel. It's adjacent to the arena. So fans are invited to attend and encouraged to attend and bring your best questions, because that's the whole point. The three of them will be sitting there taking questions from the fans. So this has been done in the past. It's always well received, and I have no reason to think it won't be this time.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's great timing right before the start of the season, to get in there. And if you have questions about the team, I know it's a lot different looking team. This is a good time to kind of go out there and just, even if you don't have questions, just go in and sit in and listen to what the people that are making the decisions about this roster have to say. And like I said, great timing. The Renaissance is a really good location. It's right across the parking lot. It's not even really across the street from Gila River Arena. It's certainly within walking distance. So it's that should be a good setup next Saturday.
What else you got, Luke? You want to go off the board? We're out of topics from the board itself.
I thought we'd go through the schedule game by game and offer predictions of scoring by period.
Well, I'm going to need to prepare a little. Maybe the next time.
Next time, okay. So we will do another one of these probably right before the start of the season. The actual season itself starts early October. What is it? October 5th, they're in Anaheim. October 7th is the home opener against Vegas. And then October 10th is Vegas's first home game ever against the Coyotes. So that's how this season starts off.
It's coming up.
A couple Pacific Division rivals right out of the gate, and Anaheim is a team that has been predicted by a lot of people to maybe have the best. Where did I see this? The best regular season. They're predicted to finish number one in the power rankings. We'll see. Either way, I mean, the Coyotes are very familiar with the Ducks. Coyotes have some players that have had a lot of success against the Ducks in the form of Max Domi and Anthony Duclair. So that's going to be exciting. It's really, once you hit training camp, it just starts rolling, right? And you don't have to wait. All right, nothing else?
That's it. I'm done. I'm very excited. We're going to do one of these real soon before the start of the season. So we invite everybody to enjoy this podcast and come back for the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks to executive producer Doug Cannon for putting this together. For Dave Vest, I'm Luke Lapinski. Thanks for listening to Coyotes Corner.